It's said that the choices made define a generation. The choices that a generation makes are what define it. So, I'm going to take 2 minutes to cover a century of history. All right? Let's go World War I. Pretty well a defining moment for that generation to enter into that war, to pick sides, to determine where they were going to fight, who they were going to fight, what was going on, to be in World War I. The choices associated with that defined that generation, the war that would end all wars. So it was known to that generation. Only defined a generation later, World War II. Right? Again, a defining time. We could say World War II, and it just sort of defines the whole generation. A series of choices that led to a great war. Right? And remaining still to this day, a number of alliances, politically, socially, that we still live with. Fast forward. The 60s. Right? We think about the 60s, we think about the choices that were going on then, right? Social justice issues. How do we bring about justice, equality, human rights? Do we or don't we support the Vietnam War? Defining choices. We understand that generation because of the choices that they made. Let's move real quick. Late 80s. Late 80s, the fall of the Berlin Wall. A series of defining choices that led to tremendous social revolution. Yesterday's paper, Mubarak is out. That's a tremendously defining choice, a series of defining choices that are making our time, right now, very, very unique. A series of choices that make our time special. Now, of course, this is halfway around the world, but within the last few years we've seen the election of the first black president, followed by, shortly, the complete reversal in Congress. Right? A series of defining choices that we might begin to say our generation is about political transformation. But more defining choices going on. Archbishop Timothy Dolan was elected not so long ago as the president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. A defining moment in our church as Americans. The U.S. Catholic Church has, as the headline to the Catholic World Report reminds us, and among others, the end of the Bernardine era. Cardinal Bernardine, the Cardinal of Chicago for a number of years, had a great deal of influence across the church in the U.S. His policy, the way in which bishops and the church in the U.S. related to the rest of the country. Timothy Dolan was not one to be under that shadow. A defining choice for our time. We don't know where it will lead our church, but we're in a moment of change. That whole principle, the fact that choices define us, that make us who we are as a generation, as a period of time, as individuals, as a community of faith, that choices define us, is precisely what our readings are getting at today. We heard in Sirach. Actually, he was more or less quoting, just sort of abbreviated, reference to Moses, some 1,000 years, 1,200 years prior, who was speaking to the people of Israel on the banks of the Jordan just before they re-entered the Promised Land. He was telling them a simple message. You have a choice. You have been given the commandments by your God. They will be life for you if you choose them. And if you do not, you'll be faced with death. This land of great promise will be yours if you live according to these commands. And if you don't, well, trouble will ensue. That was the choice that Moses told the people about. It's that choice, that fundamental choice, life or death. That's the choice that Sirach reminds us of in today's reading. He sets before us again that basic choice. Do you choose life or do you choose death? Do you choose to live according to God's command or not? It's the same thing. Jesus is making the same reference in today's gospel to the commandments. We heard an abbreviated version of it, but we get the idea. He's making reference to the commandments and saying, this is life for you. Now you're accustomed, you've heard it said, don't kill, don't commit adultery, right? Don't lie. You get that. Now, let's up it a bit. Let's let it face our daily lives, our daily decisions. Are you going to choose life? Are you going to let these commands that we've been given by God transform you or not? Are you going to choose life on a daily basis in each of your decisions or not? That's the question. Now, of course, we all want to say yes. Well, obviously I want to choose life. Obviously I want to make life-giving choices all the time. But it's not easy. So how do we do it? Really the million-dollar question. Where do I get the ability? How do I muster the ability to actually choose life day in and day out in the ordinary grind of my life when I want to rear-end the maniac in front of me who can't figure out how to drive? As I was thinking on the way over here just this evening. Or the crazy person in a line at the grocery store who, again, can't find their cash or debit card or what have you. How do I keep from pummeling them? Right? Choosing life isn't always the easiest thing. But the last couple of lines in the letter that we heard from Paul to the Corinthians today gives us a wonderful reminder and great hope. We've been given the Spirit. That sounds like a pithy thing to say. It sounds like nothing. It sounds like, okay, yeah, the Spirit. We're talking about the Spirit of God being given to us. People. Each one of us. In our baptism, in our confirmation. We celebrate it as often as we celebrate this Eucharist. The Spirit of God is with us. That's pretty powerful stuff. That's very powerful stuff. That's the stuff that lets us, in the tough times and in the easy times, to choose life. Always. May we stay in touch with that Spirit of God as we go about our week, making choices, defining ourselves. May we be the Spirit, alive and well in this world.